Please be seated as quickly as possible because I am going to do a very fast job at introducing the chair of our next session, David Rainbow. He's the Managing Director of Willis Re International, and so he'll be guiding our panelists through this next and final exciting climax to the day.
We could have done it with a bit more of the Who, maybe, and I could have done a little bit of air guitar work to get people smiling. But thank you, Faye. Thank you to ICMIF for inviting me to chair this session. As a reinsurance broker, I have to say that I'm rather preoccupied with the immediate challenge of responding to the major events that have occurred in the past few months and seeking to collect something like 50 billion. We expect there'll be 50 billion of losses that will fall to the reinsurance market of the 100 billion of insured losses. Yes, they're chronically underinsured, we all know that, but it's still 50 billion. And one of the challenges that we are currently addressing is how we make sure that the reinsurance programs in the marketplace, including many of yours, are sustainable and remain competitively priced. So it's particularly refreshing for me to join you today and to look forward beyond some of the immediate challenges to the exciting challenges and opportunities that are faced by the insurance market, and the mutual and cooperative movement is so uniquely and positively positioned to address those. The earlier sessions in the day were poof. I mean, wow. I'm not sure how you translate those words into the various languages of the interpreters, but it was quite a dazzling, dizzying, and maybe daunting mix of challenges and opportunities. And so here we shall try and move from the macro, very, very big picture issues that were talked about earlier into something much closer to home for everybody, and to get the perspective of CEOs amongst the panel, who I'm sure will very much resonate with the community at the conference. So we're very fortunate to have a panel of eminent speakers who represent very genuinely a wide perspective geographically, but also in scale and in diversity of type. And so they will introduce themselves individually when they speak. We're going to take the themes of the future, redesigning. We're going to split that into 5 themes, which I'll describe in a second. But very briefly, we have Alejandro Simón, who is the CEO of the Sancor Group in Argentina. Then we have Denis Dubois, who is President and CEO of Desjardins General Insurance. We have Anne-Mette Toftegaard, who is the CEO of LB in Denmark. We have Sato-san, who is the president of the JCIF in Japan. And lastly but not least, we have Jens Henriksson, who is president and CEO of Folksam in Sweden. So we've got a good cast to talk to this afternoon. The shape, as I mentioned, we're going to split this into 5 key themes, which are organizational change and transformation, innovation, sustainability, culture, and if you've still got the stamina at the end and we still have time, a little bit more on regulation from the CEO's perspective. We're going to try and do this in sort of chunks of about 20 minutes. We will take questions on the iPad. Again, if anybody's got the courage to raise their hands, we can do that. There are a couple of interactive voting opportunities, so don't lose your app. I hope the batteries haven't run out. And we will be using the headphone facilities because we're going to be doing some in Spanish and some in Japanese, the rest in English. I was disappointed to see on the app that you had the choice of American English or Canadian English, but not English English. Never mind, never mind, never mind. Right, so let's kick off with organizational change and transformation. With three main thrusts of questions, and our first speaker will be Anne-Mette. That's okay. So what are the biggest opportunities for mutual insurers in the future? If you're to seize those opportunities, what are organizational strengths you can draw upon, and what weaknesses will you have to resolve? In what ways do you think your company might look different in the future? What are you doing right now to make this transformation a success? And in what ways do you think younger generations are different compared to older generations as customers? So really to get much closer to you, to resonate with you, and to have relevant input for you to be able to bounce back on as we go. Anne-Mette.
And you would, thank you so much, David. And you would like me to start by saying something about who I am and where
yes,
I
please.
come
Just
from?
A little,
that,
yes,
yeah.
If you could just introduce yourself.
Okay,
yeah.
my name is Anne-Mette, and I'm from Denmark. I'm head of LB Group, which is the third largest property and casualty insurance company in Denmark. We insure professions, you could say. So that would be, for example, teachers and kindergarten teachers and nurses and medical personnel. So that's short about me. Is that?
That's it?
That's it? Okay. I've held the position for 3.5 years. I've had some time to think, of course, about what is actually the biggest opportunity for mutual insurance companies. And I think I have this one answer that stands out, and that is actually the business model that we have. I'm so amazed of how many years we've been able to be world champions in being customer-centric. We've been so good at that for so many years, and I'm sure that all the shareholder companies have been looking upon us and saying, we want to be able to do that as well. So I actually think that what we know there, the business model that we've built is the biggest opportunity that we actually have. I think it was said this morning as well that we're trustworthy. We are solely there for the members. We go to work, we live and breathe for our members. I think many of us would have like different kind of profit sharing schemes. We have low prices, we have very good products because everything we do is for the members. And we've been so good at knowing their needs, and we just have to take that knowledge, into the next era and redesign ourselves. It's like we serve a higher purpose. And as was said this morning, if we're able to take what we know, the trustworthiness that we have built, and redesign it, I think we will have a unique position. And what do I mean by that? In my opinion, insurance is going to change from being a product to being a service. I'm sure that anybody who had an injury or a claim would wish that it could have been prevented. So prevention will be the number one thing for us to concentrate on. And we can do that with the knowledge we have being customer-centric, knowing the need before it's needed. And we can implement the data that, of course, we will have access to, and, of course, technology. So being able to take insurance from something that pays out eventually over time to being a service that prevents having, injuries, having claims is the new era in my opinion. So, and I think in that journey, the trustworthiness that I hope we all have will help us attract customers and help us convince them that the members will give us the data. so that we can say you left the candle burning, or you forgot to close the refrigerator, or your blood pressure is too high, because we have demonstrated decade after decade that we use whatever information we have for the best benefit of the members. So I'm hoping that we will be able to convince them that we can, take the data that they give us and treat it well and use it for good to make them not have injuries. And I also agree with what was being said this morning, that we can differentiate with the data protection. We need to show our members that the trustworthiness that we have built up will also embrace being able to take care of their data. So sometimes in my company, we have this vision saying that maybe actually our industry should be saying that we should make insurance redundant, not necessary. Because Internet of Things and artificial intelligence will help us prevent a lot of the claims. Of course, it's not just Christmas Eve. There's a lot of obstacles to overcome. And one of those would be how do we convince or become relevant for the younger generations? How do we make them know that the business model that we have is a winning business model? Because they need speed, claims paid out in 3, 2, 1 second, maybe. They need technology. We saw the lemonade. They need everything to be smart and adaptable. They listen to friends, social media, not parents like we did, I think. So how do we convince them that going with a mutual company would be the way to go? I think we can pitch into like Friendsurance, Lemonade, peer-to-peer. We all need a sense of belonging. I think in this society, communities have come to stay. It's like back to the roots. And mutuals are actually also, how we started. It's kind of back to the roots. So I think that having the higher purpose, being there for them, will hopefully help us pitch into being able to be relevant also in the future if we can transform the business model of today or a few years back to what is a mutual company, insurance company in the future. How is that, how do you look upon that, and how does it make itself relevant? I think that was a few highlights.
That's fine. Thank you very much. Yes, obviously some key elements there which very much echo the sentiments of this morning. Sato-san, would you like to carry on, please?
Thank you very much. I come from Japan. Therefore, I will be speaking in Japanese, and I'd like you to listen to me through your headset. My name is Sato, and Sato is the most popular name in Japan. And amongst the Japanese people, my surname, Sato, is the most popular. Our JCIF is a cooperative union specializing in mutual insurance. Originally, we were providing mutual insurance as part of the co-ops business together with retail and welfare services. But as the Japanese law changed 9 years ago, the mutual insurance of the business became independent. However, we have not really changed our philosophy, and the fact that the co-op stores all over Japan is the base of our business. In Japan, the population is shrinking, and then the aging is progressing. And then as the society changes, and of course there's quite a few people who are living alone, and then people are not mutually helping, and the social problem is rampant.
But because of the budget deficit, the service is far from catching up with covering or protecting these people impacted. So under such circumstances, the co-op is offering not only the products that offer safety, but also the community, or help building the safety and the security in the community that is relevant to the United Nations, the SDG, or the Sustainable Development Goals. And the important thing is that we do this as a part of our own business, and we are mainly engaged in the activities to offer help for the enhancing the good health of the elderly. And I believe that this type of activity will help improving the awareness of the cooperatives like us. So we consider this almost as our core business, and we will actively engage in such activities. So we consider this as giving us an opportunity to do that. So that is the first point I wanted to make. The second point, of course, the co-op is an organization that tries to improve on people's livelihood. This is an organization for the mutual assistance. So by strengthening the bond with each other, we are trying to rebuild a society that is kind and gentle to each other. How will we be able to address that as an organization? I believe that would be very important going forward. Our organization works with 150 local co-ops all over Japan. Each co-op store, or the stores that deliver products and merchandise, have the interactions with the members. Every week, our employees they deliver merchandise on a weekly basis. So we will attach great importance to this kind of contact point, or the channel with the members, because these gives us the opportunities to directly capture the members' needs. And it is very important for our employees to experience this kind of on-site interactions with the members. Thus, we have a 2-year training programs through which our younger employees will have this kind of on-site experience. In about 2 years' time, over 20% of our employees will actually have the practical experience on-site. This is the second thing that we're trying to do for the transformation of the organization. Now, the third point, at the present, the so-called the baby boomers, those people who supported the high economic growth period, are reaching their retirement age. Now is the time of the massive generational change. At present, in our organization, there are quite a few younger generation employees who are in their 30s and younger. By taking this opportunity, we will be able to enable these younger employees to become capable of shouldering the core of our business, and they will be able to face the similar young generation people who are more likely to seek information on their own. We will be able to encourage our whole business and organization to develop into that direction. For that purpose, we have the 2-year concept studying or training program for all the employees. This is our means to help them think about what the cooperatives should be. And for this general conference, we have, although ours is not a very big organization, we brought 5 young men and women for Young Leaders Program. I would definitely like the general meeting to strengthen this Young Leader Program. This is the third point I wanted to share with you. So these are the 3 points of focus during our in our current activities.
Thank you very much, Sato-san. Clearly, there are many opportunities that can be seized, and embracing the change in generation is certainly a very key one. Denis, the perspective of Desjardins, please.
So for the group Desjardins, this is located in Canada, the largest financial institution group in Canada. And in PNC, so we're the 3rd largest insurer and property casualty in Canada. So just to set up the stage. So I think first going back obviously to the purpose of the co-op and the mutual are there to answer members and members' need. The reality is that there's two things. The first thing is that members' need are evolving, and they are, the second thing, evolving quickly. And in order to maybe illustrate that, so we were talking about transformation. So I would say that our organization today is going through 6 different transformations at the same time. In the past, you would talk in an organization about 1 or 2 zone of transformation. I would say we're going through 6 transformation dimension at this point. The first one is, we've talked about this previously, so client centricity, which seems obvious, but the reality is that everyone is trying to aim at member or client leadership. And for us, it's a journey that started, has always been there, but trying to reach that leadership started back in 2012. And it's really a key focus within the organization, and we're not there yet. So we've started with implementing the Net Promoter System, working on irritants within our process, simplifying our solution, the interaction with the clients, and today questioning if all our business practices are in the members' best interest. So this is really a journey. Obviously, the digital transformation that every organization is going through it's big, it's significant. So it's not just about developing digital solution, it's about making sure that throughout the organization, whether it's in marketing, whether it's in the analytic group, we develop that digital thinking throughout the organization, and this has been also a journey that is far from being over for the organization. We're also working really hard on what we call the operational excellence transformation. So as an organization, we've clearly defined our strategy was built around operational excellence, bringing the lower total cost to the members and clients. And even if today we enjoy, honestly, a good position in our market, so we have a 5-point competitive advantage over the industry on the expense ratio side. We believe because of what is happening in the insurtech world, where all those companies are coming in to remove some of those friction costs, that if we don't move today, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, we'll be struggling. So digital is one part of the solution, but RPA, simplification, those are all elements that are contributing to improving the performance of the organization to the benefit of the member at the end of the day. So I would say this is a third zone of transformation that really is impacting throughout the organization. Then analytics. So we have the privilege to have a group of 100 actuaries that are very good at managing risk. The reality, and you all know that, is that now there's all those data around clients, members and clients, that we need to leverage. So use that analytic capacities in order to improve the interaction that we have with the members and the clients. So that's a third zone, also shifting on the analytics. We're going through, like many other players, through a transition on our IT system. So it's a completely new system, new ways of working. So everyone throughout the organization needs to adapt to those new tools and new ways of working. So a fifth zone of transformation. And we've made, because in Canada, consolidation has been taking place for some years. So Desjardins took a position where we want to emerge as amongst the leader in the industry. So we've made a significant acquisition 2 years ago, where Monique Leroux was there at the time. We worked closely, Monique and I, on that transaction back a few years ago. It's also changing us. We've increased our presence outside of Quebec in Canada significantly, and we've introduced a new distribution model. So my message here is that customer expectations are changing, and pace of change is accelerating, and the reality of coping with multiple transformation, I guess, is something that the organization needs to be able to cope with.
Sometimes I think the only continuity is change. It's permanent and constant. this is perhaps the moment for us to consider the first question to the floor, which picks up on the themes that you've discussed. They all flow through very much. Is that going to appear up there in a moment? I will read them through. So which will be the single most critical operational area to the success of your business in the next 2 years? Will it be sales and marketing, talent management, technology, risk management, or product development? Let's hope people's batteries are still alive. Wait patiently. Connectivity is certainly a very, very recurring theme, isn't it? And that connectivity with your customers, with your teams, but also with governments and banks, if you have banks associated, is something that was certainly coming up this morning. So, do we have the technology? Yes, we do. Interesting that the old-fashioned sales and marketing is taking a back seat, which resonates very much with us in the reinsurance business as well, where we probably spend 80–90% of our time on analysis and research, and only 10 or 20% on the transaction. So talent management and technology clearly very much at the fore of your priorities. Technology brings us, I think, very conveniently onto the second theme, which is innovation. I was inspired by Anne Sommer, who said in Minneapolis that I see opportunity in everything, which suggests many ranges of types of innovation. But let us seek the thoughts of our panel today on a couple of the questions that come to mind. Are there any recent innovations in your market that have made a big difference to the way you compete? What will the greatest impact of new technologies on your organization be in the next 10 years? And what does the advent of InsurTech mean for your organization? And we're going to start with Alejandro, please. So give everybody a moment, if you would, to put the ears back on.
Okay. Well, I am Chief Executive Officer of Sancor Insurance Group, which is the biggest insurance company of Argentina, with more than 10% and almost $2 billion in premium income. Although we work in every line of business, I consider that we are specialized in workers' comp, in agro-insurance, and health, probably. Well, I will switch to Spanish, which is my mother tongue. I apologize about that, but I think that my answers will be much richer in that way, so I kindly ask you to turn your translators.
I thought you had your twin doing the interpreting there, Frank.
Yeah. Bueno, en cuanto a la pregunta.
Very well, then. As regards the questions that you have tabled, of course, there have been significant changes, and they have come about very quickly indeed. Look at the famous Moore's Law, which says that we can all perceive change. Perhaps they don't account or for a significant amount or percentage of our income, at least in Argentina, but they are exponential, and this cultural shift will mean a change in patterns of consumption. New generations, younger generations have different patterns of consumption, different habits, and this will mean change. You have some companies like Rule that launched Rule Insurance. Then they decided to stop selling that product. Other internet brokers, etc., have replaced them, of course, but that's an example that not everything that shines is gold. Now, we can break down the challenges into 3 different elements. Each challenge is, of course, also an opportunity. That's the nature of life, isn't it? The nature of things. What we ensure will change drastically, for instance, vehicle insurance. You're going to have self-drive vehicles in the future, and coverage will be completely different to what we have now, obviously. It will be linked to the coverage we offer for electronic equipment, electronic products. The vehicle manufacturing industry will perhaps include insurance in that package of services in more of a fashion than now. So the nature of the risk will change too. The nature of vehicles on our roads will change. Not every family will need to have a car. We will have a sharing economy and self-drive vehicles, and this will, I think, change the rates of penetration of the insurance industry. What about agricultural risk? Labs are producing hamburgers now, hamburgers that never touched a farm, really. They have been produced using stem cells in labs. They've never touched a cow. So some people say that the quality of the product is improving, the cost of manufacture is diminishing. Many feel that our children or grandchildren will never understand or comprehend why their ancestors had to kill in order to eat. So this is why I say to my agricultural experts, let's see what happens with the agricultural products we offer in the future if the nature of the products changes so dramatically in this way. So that is a challenge and a source of new opportunities. What about Frenchurance, Lemonade, new insurance companies in the same sector, but they work on a peer-to-peer basis. So they create a community, and this means that transaction costs are less. The claims, the cost of dealing with a claim is less as well, and this is an important challenge to the traditional way of doing business. Then another challenge, which is perhaps easiest to take on internally, is digitalization. That is no longer a trend. It's a reality, really, digitalization, and it hasn't come to an end. It's proceeding apace. So we do quite a lot remotely now, especially younger generations do things remotely. They don't have to be present physically in order to carry out a purchase. They do it remotely. We need to deal with innovation. We don't have to set up an innovation department in our companies. I think that we need to deal with innovations, changing the way in which we think, our business culture. We need to have an open mind, and that's what we need to foster. And you also have to do this with existing employees. We were set up 62 years ago. It's not easy to do, really. It will take some work to change the way in which we think and operate. You can have incubation centers, too, for this. I will try and stick to the time you have allotted me. But I just want to mention one thing that we've done in Sancor. We've set up a new technological business and social center, which is like an incubator. And we followed a model set up in Israel. And we subcontracted this. We set up this center in order to try and help develop a new sense of business leadership in Argentina. In Japan, I heard that you have a problem in that you have an aging population and relations between people in society have changed, etc. In our country, the situation is different. There's a big informal sector, however, and there are also cultural issues. There are problems relating to corruption. Some values have been lost, which we upheld in the future. And that means that businessmen, not just politicians, but trade unionists and businessmen who have managed to position themselves satisfactorily in the past are the ones that don't necessarily compete fairly, but use all sorts of methods to attract a greater clientele. We need to follow democratic processes, and when it comes to breaching the productivity gap, for instance, with the U.S., and look at South Korea and Israel. In Israel, there was a big change when the Berlin Wall fell. There were migratory flows from the former Soviet Union, of scientists in particular, and technical specialists. And this brought about a complete and utter change in the Israeli economy. It was an economy based on agriculture, on know-how. After the U.S., Israel is the country with the most amount of companies listed in NASDAQ. This morning, it was already mentioned that industry has changed considerably. We went to a prepay system in health insurance already, so we have brought about that shift. In order to continue being successful and strong in the insurance sector, we have to take into account scalable disruptive technologies. We set up biotechnology and nanotechnology labs to achieve synergies and to go beyond the insurance sector. I'm going to give you 2 or 3 examples to conclude. We've developed telemedical services, and we've developed applications so that the medical records of the patient can be downloaded onto their mobile device. We have satellites too to monitor crops, etc., etc. Thank you.
Very much, Alejandro. Wow, yeah, it's touching every aspect of the business, isn't it? Denis, the same thing happening in your...
In our market, in the organization, so obviously it's not different than anywhere else in the world, so innovation is important. InsurTech are present. So I think they're both a threat and an opportunity at the end of the day, but we're putting a lot of effort on the opportunity side of the occasion. And like admitted, our approach in the market is really to try to develop an approach with members and clients, which is centered around enriching the interaction with those members and clients around 2 dimensions, prevention and caring. In fact, we've put ourselves into action already, partnering with InsurTech companies. Mm-hmm. So, and I know those exist in other places, but we first started with our connected car offer. So. We've signed an agreement with a firm called CMT in the States that provided a smartphone telematic solution where suddenly, obviously, you're able, and we do have some traction with our clients. They're getting on board with that solution, and suddenly you start to have that constant feedback in the relationship with the client versus in property and casualty, having that typical approach where you sell the product, you service the product, you maybe renew the product, and you may have a claim, so suddenly you have that interaction. So we did that 2-3 years ago, and we've introduced in March of this year, so with the connected own concept that we're hearing about, we've put ourselves into action. And so what we've put in place is a partnership with that time, another US-based startup, which is called Roost. And Roost had those devices that connected to Wi-Fi. So very low cost, $37 per unit. No hub required, so it's really just the unit. And so three function, detect water, detect temperature drops, and a humidity level within the house. And so our idea to go with that prevention and create that interaction was to provide to every single policy holder on the home side a sensor, a free sensor. So instead of giving a discount, what we did was to provide that sensor. So we've sent already since March 60,000 of those sensors into the home. So suddenly we have also on the property insurance side that connection with the client. And what we're doing is we're all bringing that into a hub. So everyone has a app, so we have our app, but we have suddenly that dynamic where you have the connected feedback on the car, that connected feedback on the home, and obviously there's way more ideas where suddenly you start to be active. And oftentimes the question I have is, well, does it work? Were you able to really avoid some claims or some members? And the answer is yes. So we've got rapidly within the first week customers saying that the sensor provided the alert and there was water in the basement. So I believe that technology can bring us an innovation into the area where we have more frequent interaction that helps enriching people's life by really helping them solve or avoid some claims. So that's an example of what we did in our market.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so seeing it very much as a positive rather than a negative and a threat, and as an ally to connect with people in new and different ways. We're going to have the second question, which is how do you rate your organization for its agility and ability to innovate? So clearly the panelists are all being very proactive in this arena. How does the wider family of ICMIF feel that how they're set? So there are a variety of options there. Are we ahead of the game? So are we way ahead of the Googles and the rest of Facebook and co? We're about as good as any of our competitors. We're as good as our competitors, but I think we could do even better. We're not as good as our competitors, but we're working on it. We're not as good as our competitors. We urgently need to find ways to improve. Just while the figures are coming up, I remember listening to, I'm not sure we're allowed to mention stockholder companies, but AXA, the new chairman of, I can't hear hissing, but Thomas Bubel, he said that when he joined AXA that his priority was to try and secure the business that they have, and he would prefer to cannibalize himself rather than be cannibalized by third parties. So clearly it's a priority for many, many groups. So what are the scores on the doors? Aha. We're not as good as our competitors, seems to be coming out as the biggest figure, but probably not surprising because this is very much work in progress, isn't it? It's new for so many of our businesses. We're as good as our competitors, but we think we could do more. Hilda this morning was saying that we can always do more, and that appears to be the case for the ICMIF community overall, but progressing, and I think that you can be optimistic about innovation. Whilst innovating, we always have to remember maintaining and sustaining our business, and the first session this morning was all about responsible businesses, and so we move on to sustainability. Jens will be our first speaker there, and I'll just take you through the questions that came to us. How are you responding to social changes, e.g. aging populations, rather than the youngsters this time, the aging populations, withdrawal of social provision, or environmental changes, e.g. increase in natural disasters? How does the protection gap in your country impact on long-term viability of the industry generally and/or your business specifically? How are you setting about achieving sustainable development goals? Alejandro will talk specifically about that after Jens. Please, Jens.
Thank you, David. My name is Jens. I'm the CEO of Folksam, which is the second largest insurance company when it comes to properties and casualties in Sweden, and the largest one when it comes to life insurance. I was reflecting on what you saw sort of from the poll there. I'll give you an example. So a friend of mine found out that the largest newspaper in Sweden has now published all the news that they have ever done in the last 100 years. and I was on that web, and I found a story about Folksam. So it was in 1956, the 26th of June, 1956, and it was an airplane coming from New York, changing in Amsterdam, and they delivered an IBM 6500 to Folksam. It was the first electronic computer that was for business purposes used commercially. So we bought it, and we were among the first in digitization. The problem is it's still in the basement working, but that's a different story. So I'm going to speak a bit about sustainability. I'm going to talk more about sort of global warming and things like that. But I think I will get to the whole sum of it at the end. It's not easy to do that because you can have different perspectives. One perspective was the one Justin had yesterday, and that is to talk about it as the challenge of our lifetime. And for me, a striking figure somebody told me was that Ganges, the river in India, there are around 400 million people living close to that. And the water comes from a glacier, and that glacier will disappear in 30 years. So what will happen then? Global warming is a big issue. You could also talk about it as a sort of financial perspective, as risk mitigation, and you can talk about insurance risk or operative risk and things like that. But I'm not going to do that way because Sean told us to be sort of in very simple terms. So Folksam, very simple. We've been engaged in this since the 1960s. So in 1972, we were one of the founding members of the Stockholm deal, which eventually led to the Copenhagen and then Paris Agreement. Why? Well, I think it's a combination of two things. The good thing is that, well, mutual tends to attract do-gooders. Let's be honest, that's what a lot of people want to do good, and they are driven by giving, sort of creating a better world. But we also have to be honest, and sometimes there is a sort of certain, we're playing with other people's money. And that meant that some of the things we did, I would say, was not in the best interest of the customers, and that's a problem. Now, it has developed quite a lot during the last 50 years. And what we've done is that if you look on the claims management side, we've done a lot of things. We're using, for instance, used parts to renovate cars, food in the restaurant. We would never accept swordfish, as we got here outside. And we also give lower premiums to people that drive slowly. But let me say a few words about investments. So as an insurance company, you have a lot of money to invest. And what we did in the beginning, we've done during 30 years, is to decide what not to invest in. So we do not invest in tobacco. We do not invest in companies who do weapons of mass destruction. We do not invest in companies that do gaming. We do not invest in companies that do human rights violations. And that worked pretty good. We are doing pretty good. The thing that's happening now is that the private companies are catching up. So we were the leader. Nobody was there, and people looking at us, calling us quasi-socialist. I mean, saying you're not following your fiduciary duties. But we're seeing now that all the private companies are suddenly very close by, and they are like in the neck breathing us. Now, you can have two reflections on that. The first one, it's good. I mean, come on, the world needs all the companies to think about sustainability, and especially in other countries on the West Coast, further west here, if the president don't think it's a big thing, it's good that the companies think it's important. So it's very good that you see companies. But the problem is that, well, our competitive advantage is disappearing. So what we are now saying is that, okay, so let's say not only what not to invest in, but what to invest in. And that's much more difficult because we invested in the beginning in wind farms and things like that, and we lost tons of money. So don't do that. What we did instead was that we found something we call green bonds. Green bonds is very simple. It's a company or multinational or a bank or something that, or a local authority that lends money, borrows money to use it to do an environmental project. And then it's looked upon by different agencies who stamp it and say, okay, you're using the money in a green way. The good thing about it is that the creditworthiness is not only on that project, but on the whole entity. So that means very good. And so we're a bit like now we're in the UK, so you need to quote one of the famous authors here in the UK. We're a bit like, you read Tolkien, Lord of the Rings. Okay, we're like the Ents. Ents are the one, the Fangorn is the Ent, so it takes ages for us to decide. And we talk and talk and talk and talk, but suddenly when we've decided, we go all in for it. So 1.5 years ago, we decided to go all in for it. And now, during the last 2 years, we're up to $2 billion in green bonds. That means that we're actually one of the largest green bond holders in the whole world. So I was invited, I had a meeting a few weeks ago with the president of the World Bank, Vice President Gore, John Kerry, Hank Paulson, the French Minister of Finance, Le Maire, Governor Carney, and we're only 20 people in the room to find out what can you do to be a global climate leader. And they looked at me and said, what does the global financial capital think? Which is pretty weird, but that's another thing. So now comes the good part. And the good part is that when we buy these green bonds, we sell off US government bonds. So in reality, we get a pickup in returns. So we do two things at the same time. One is that we get better returns, meaning we give better pensions or lower premiums, and at the same time, the money they are invested are working and doing good. So now I'll give you an advice. And the advice is the following. And that is that if you look on sort of green bonds, it only goes to one of the sustainability, the SDGs. They have 17 SDGs. Now, how do you cover all of them? Well, my point would be, look at the multilateral institutions. The ADB, the EIB, the EBRD, the NIB, the IFC. Look at the World Bank. The World Bank, their key thing is to end extreme poverty and promote shared prosperity in a sustainable way. That's sustainability. So very simple. Sell government bonds and invest in bonds from the World Bank. Pick up while doing good. And that's pretty good.
That is a very interesting perspective. Macro and micro all combined into one there. Thank you very much, Jens. I think, Alejandro, you'd like to make some comments on the investments that you've been making in achieving sustainable development goals, which was talked about in the previous session.
Sí, creo, hemos trabajado.
Thank you very much. We've worked to try and comply with the SDGs in the context of the Agenda 2030 of the UN. But everything is interlinked. Sven has been very clear and has clearly outlined the problems we all face. To go into a bit more detail, we live in a world which is using up the resources available. We're very aggressive as regards the resources that we have available, and I think that the mutual and cooperative insurers can set an example here. A lot of the problems that our societies are facing are due to huge economic concentrations, not just the differences in terms of economics between developed and underdeveloped countries, but there are differences now between developed countries. Look at the populist tendencies and nationalist tendencies that we have seen more recently. I think that what we in the mutual and cooperative insurance sector do is very important. We are not at a disadvantage in this new world. We talked about regulation and regulators earlier on. Regulators are going to try and get the sector to shoulder its social responsibilities, and I think that that is not a bad thing. I think that all of us here are in a very good position indeed to set the example and to show how it can be done. We have a very close links to ICMIF. We support what they do, and they support us, and we can use that relationship too. We also have close links with the UN and the World Bank, and can work together with them and ICMIF to see how what mechanisms we can set in place in order to help reduce poverty. I think that we can join hands and work together with ICMIF with this as one of our major objectives. I wanted to make some further comments. We are also dealing with microfinance. We work together with the Ministry of Finance in Argentina and financial institutions. We're trying to grant credit to micro companies, something similar to the 555 program, but in a lesser scale, let's say. And we're also developing environmental damage insurance schemes and products. This has not been fully developed yet, but is something that society demands nowadays. We are also trying to offer prevention services. And we have containment services that we offer too, and risk prevention services. We have participated in labor risk services and products that are provided by these services, occupational hazard, etc. We're talking about helping people and people who have not died as a result of an occupational hazard because of the services that we have offered to a large extent. So this has helped the individual, obviously, and it has also helped their families, etc. So we start with the theory and then make it something more concrete, more practical. We have the 10 fundamental principles of the UN Global Pact, which we must comply with too. Last year, we were present in Argentina at a roundtable organized by the UN on this. We have to do something about some of these pillars, for instance, corruption, which is a very serious problem, not only in my country, but in the continent that we are in.
Thank you, Alejandro. This takes us on, I think, to culture, because what you're touching on is so close to the fundamental of what differentiates the mutual cooperative movement, and that is that there is a broader trust in your offering, and there is clearly a disenchantment with the more acute end of capitalism. We saw it since the financial crash. We see it in elections around the world regularly at the moment. So how in this world of rapid change, where you're having to embrace so many different challenges, do you evolve and maintain the culture that is so unique and emblematic of your community? How do you address the issue of customer trust and loyalty? What does the mutual cooperative brand mean to your organization? Does it help you differentiate your firm? How are you defending or protecting the brand being so important these days? And how do you create a good customer experience that balances the use of remote technologies, e.g. website transactions, with personalized service, e.g. face-to-face interaction? And Mette, perhaps you'd like to start, and Sato-san will continue afterwards.
Yes, thank you. Culture is so important, and protecting the brand is essential. I mean, we all seen examples from around the world or our home country when a strong going business can be on the front page of some newspaper, and the next day it's almost gone. So we really have to really have to protect the culture and the brand. I think first of all, I think it's very important that the employees, the people working for your companies, are proud of what they do. setting out on a journey, making them feel that they go to work and do something that differentiates themselves from, what they might be doing somewhere else. We saw the note from, I think it was the chief executive of Deutsche Bank yesterday. He said that, I have like robots working and I have to convert what they're doing today into something that's more meaningful. And I think that's what we're facing as well, that, the culture in the company the DNA needs to stay the same, but we have to take it to the next level. And how do we do that? I think interaction with customers will be so much different in the future because we know their needs and we can make products and what I was saying before and what you have been saying. But I think that it's like the collaboration between the people working for our companies and our customers, our members will be on a whole different level in the future. We're debating with my company that, maybe we should educate the members when they call us that, I can help you, on the phone, but I can also show you how to use our app or how to use the self-service portal. Or would you like to have an SMS next time that flood is coming or we have windstorms? And how do I activate that or deactivate it? So we'll go from robotics and employees working with back office function to them being more of counselors and taking our members by the hand, mentally speaking, or and guiding them into what is the need that they have. Do you need to speak to me on the phone, or would you prefer to do it yourself? And I think that we will see that the competencies of the people that work for us will change. In Denmark, we're seeing that, we have now nurses on staff, social workers on staff, psychologists on staff, anthropologists on staff, because we need to assess the needs of our members in a whole different way. And I think we need to help them in a whole different way. And how do we keep the culture going? I think we have to tap into trust, as I said before, and also being proud of what you do. And I think I agree, of course, with the gentleman from Deutsche Bank that, you will be more proud of what you do if you feel that it has come to a new level where meaningfulness is something else than what I did a year ago. So I think that's very important. I also think that the culture can enhance by maybe, speaking of sustainability, maybe if you want to kind of grow that proudness of what you do, that some people might want to donate to charity, like we see with Lemonade, but you also within the company might have employees who would like to work for charities on and off. And maybe you could, give them time off to do that, so that they feel in all together, it's a meaningful job. And in there lies a differentiator, I think, so that I think we will go to work with who we are more in the future. Our personalities will shine through. And you will as a member, you will buy into, I want to be part of that movement or that company or what they have to offer. And knowing what, like Jens said, that you use your investments to do something that makes a difference. And so we can take the macro down to the micro level now, maybe. I think that will pitch into keeping a culture that is based in the mutual era and having a purpose in the future as well.
Thank you, Anne-Mette. Sato-san, would you like to, please?
Well, generally speaking, the co-op insurances are, well, compared to the commercial insurances, the premium is low and then protection is larger, and customers can be provided with good services, and then that's what the members appreciate. And in fact, the JCIF has been number one in the Japanese Consumers Satisfaction Index in the life insurance category for 4 years in a row. Behind this is that we are very member-centric and also community-based. And also, at co-op stores and supermarkets all over Japan, their shop assistants and delivery staff promote the sales of co-op insurance products while selling and delivering food and household consumables. And they even explain our insurance products. They are always close to our members and help our members when they are in need. So all the employees are working hard for the members. And this kind of thing has really earned us the trust amongst the members. Of course, we are here to pay the benefit to our members and policy holders. And at the shops and also at the time of delivery, when we see the customers, may not be every week, however, we always ask and tell our policy holders, do not forget to claim your benefit. And also in Japan, when people become ill or injured, we have this custom of making paper cranes to pray for their fast recovery. And our members all over Japan voluntarily make these paper cranes. And these cranes are sent to the policyholders with the claim forms. So this kind of relationship is very much nurtured and developed. And also, in case of large-scale disasters from all over Japan, employees of co-op will come together and visit all the afflicted and affected. So all these activities have been conducted by our members. And of course, we need to nurture our members who over the years have worked hard and supported us. So there are members who have held our policies for a long period of time, and then they may not have benefited from any of the money that they might have used for the premiums, but they can be proud of the fact that their money is being used to help others. So these are the things that we always keep in mind. And then because we are so close to our members, we can listen to the voices of our members. And that is the strength. And that is the most important thing. And then that are the things that we keep in mind in building our brand and nurture it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sato-san. Isn't that origami bird just a wonderful example of how to communicate? I remember reading in your CEO Insights 2017, one of the conclusions or one of the findings was, how do we improve the awareness of the mutual cooperative difference and the benefits of the way in which we do things? And that's such a touching form of achieving that, a little bit more subtle than some of the advertisements we see on the television these days by non-cooperative organizations. Let's pick up on some of the questions that are coming from the floor. Thank you very much. And I'll ask this question openly. So what about the future scares you the most in respect to the current mutual business model? What do you think is, what keeps you awake at night?
So maybe I can start.
Please.
Okay, I'll start. So it's going back to that pace of change and being able to adapt to that world. So the nimbleness of the organization needs to be present. And obviously, there's when you look at life, there's things that do not change when we're talking about So the nature of our mission to be there to provide product and services to members, but at the same time, their expectations are changing. And it's not true that they expect that they will, in our case of P&C, that they will, at least not all of them, and probably more so the millennials, their expectation is different. So our ability to adapt, so part of it starts with us, part of it, and we have that conversation around regulation, comes up with the regulation. I can tell you a story back in Canada. So we've been trying to work for 3 years to be able to provide an electronic pink slip. And we're still struggling to get the regulators in the country to accept the concept of an electronic pink slip. And you get those models like Lemonade that are coming in with solutions that are fully digital. So part of it is on us, part of it is regulation. But for me, that capacity to adapt to an environment where change are going so fast and they're so numerous is clearly, and I guess it's true for every business, but maybe even more so in the nature of who we are as Co-op. We're more conservative, and so that, from my perspective.
In order to compete, are you finding that you're attracting better talent than you were before with this? We found in London in the reinsurance community that a lot of people, graduates, would sought to go into banking in the past, but they're coming to us, and I'm saying, wow, you've got an excellent CV. So why are you attracted more to the insurance sector than the banking or other financial sectors? And they say, well, because of the core values that you're expressing, we feel that we're doing something for society rather than just taking something out. Are you finding that you're attracting better quality people because of the shifts in priorities and emphasis, which will help you maintain your credo? Annette?
If I could just say that on your first question, I just had a short remark. There was a survey in Denmark, I think, I can't remember if it was like a large or a smaller, but we might be perceived as mutuals as a little bit more old-fashioned and less efficient. And that would be something that could keep me awake at night because we have to persuade them that, that's not the case. I think that with my company, we're very privileged in Denmark, and we just had a survey saying that they asked a lot of employees from all over the insurance and bank and life and pension industry that the company they would like to work for most would be my company. And of course, that makes me very proud. But what we're struggling with is that typically our compensations and salaries would be a bit lower than other places because we're a mutual. So we have to pitch into those core values that you need to be in it for the higher purpose and not just the salary. And that is what we're struggling with. But I think so far so good that we're attracting good talent.
Quality of talent or scariness? Please comment on either. Alejandro, you had your hand up.
No, no vemos.
We have no problem in that sense in our case, really. Whether we are or not mutuals or cooperatives, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. On the contrary, in the past 5-6 years, we've had growth rates of 7 to 8% in premiums in comparison to the general insurance market. We have a very well-informed market now, a well-informed public. They seek out the best quality products, and that public is also very much aware of the impact on natural resources and the way in which humanity is behaving nowadays. Perhaps because we're more efficient, I don't know, but I think that has nothing to do really with the regulatory framework as regards attracting talent. No problem. Really, we've had no problem in attracting talented people. There is less turnover in our staff nowadays, we've noticed. As regards IT services, here we have a very dynamic people, very dynamic team, people very much up on digital marketing, big data, analytics, etc. So we're talking about something very dynamic here, something, where you always need more people. So we're always looking for talent here.
Jens.
Could I follow up? Because I think we're in the middle of 4 strong forces. The first strong force is the economy. And this challenge with low interest rates is a big challenge for life companies. So that's one big challenge. And also the low inflation environment, and especially in Japan, you're seeing this problem. The other one coming is digitization. It's a huge challenge, and everybody's talking about it, so I'm not going to say much about that. The third challenge is regulation, because we are seeing so much regulation, and the view of the politicians is sort of comes from the view of the public, and the public really hates financial services, these financial services companies. And that means that what they've done with the banks, they're now sort of saying that, okay, so let's now do it with the insurance sector. And the fourth strong force is corporate social responsibility. And in some ways, the mutuals or cooperatives are seen as a bit quasi-governmental. And that means there are much stronger demands on us. I never walk against red light. I mean, I'm an insurance executive. I cannot do that. I cannot bike without the helmet. I cannot do, you need to think about those things the whole time. And if we sell something the same way a private company does, it will be us in the newspaper. So it's very tough to be in a mutual in those 4 different areas. Now, I think Denise said something very cool before. He said, so we have an advantage. And that advantage is the 5% we have as a margin compared to the for-profit companies. Because we can use those, because we do not need to give money to the stock owners. We can use them for better products, lower prices, or give back dividends. Now, then comes the sort of a tricky and difficult question, which Annemette referred to. And if it's so smart, why are not all companies in the world mutual or cooperative? And the answer is, of course, because it's about execution. It is problematic, and let's confess it. It's very problematic in a mutual company. We have tons of products, and how do you decide which product is good or bad out of only a customer perspective? It's really difficult. If you just have a for-profit perspective, it's much simpler to take away all the products that don't deliver profits, but we need to think more. And I think that's one of the reasons why we are bad at execution. And in my worst days, I think that, well, roughly that execution outsmarts the other 5%, and that's the reason why it is. So our focus should be on execution. If we do the execution right, we will take over the world.
Bridging from that, there is a question, what skills and competencies do you believe will be most critical to your organizations in the future? What are the biggest gaps you see currently? So do we need to get people who are better at execution? How do we engender that culture?
So maybe I can build on all those elements at the same time, and going back to your talent question. So no doubt that execution is the key at the end of the day. We all get the same strategy, same information, same insight, and so after it's a matter of execution. I believe that the co-op, the mutual values is absolutely attractive to the new generation. There's no doubt in my mind. The challenge is, do they feel that we're performant organization? Because it's one thing to share the value, but they want to be part also of a winning organization. And so you need, in my mind, you need both. You need to be strong at execution and really live your values. And I believe, and that's one of the things that keeps me awake at night, because talent, in our world, talent is a challenge today to attract the right and retain the right talent. I think it's clear when you look at the study, 5-10 years down the road is going to be even more of a challenge. And the type of talent that you'll need to attract will be not completely, but some of it will be different. And we're competing against the same talents. We're all talking about digital. We're all talking about analytics. And every organization is doing that at the same time. So that challenge, and that's part of execution, getting the right people in the right chair to do the whatever the plan of your organization is honestly far from bringing an easy task from my chair.
Anne-Mette.
Could I add something?
You may.
I think something that we haven't touched today, but that I also think is very important is partnerships. I think that we can't go through what is coming alone. We need to partner up with other insurance companies, but also all other kinds of industry. And I'm hoping, because of course I agree with the execution part, but I'm hoping that we might be an attractive partner because we are pitching in on some of the things with values and customer loyalty. To go back to the question, I think our members, they live a long time with our companies. They don't, shop around as young generations are sure to do. So we might solve some of the issues that we have with. It might be new technologies, innovation, whatever, going into partnerships. And I think that what we lack in organizational capabilities, we might get also through partnerships. And even, the way to execute. We might pick it up by thinking large scale through partnerships.
We have a further 10 minutes. A question has come in regarding the 555 initiative. We haven't talked about microinsurance particularly in this session. It's particularly addressed to Alejandro and Anne-Mette. How do you think you can utilize your support of the 555 initiative to engage your staff and policyholders in understanding your difference, how you are differentiating yourselves? Tricky question. Was that your boss sending you that question?
No.
We sponsored into 555 this year, and it's kind of ironic because in Denmark everybody has insurance, so we have a whole different society. I know, of course, it will be coming, and young people, as I mentioned before, are not. I think 1 in 5 does not take out insurance because they probably forget it. It's not because they can't afford it. So I'm thinking that the whole 555 project is, if we take it to Denmark, it's we have to think it in another way, because the welfare system and the whole fundament that we are based on is actually kind of. We don't have any big issues concerning this. So I think we need to reinvent or take it into another perspective in Denmark. But I know that the people that I work with are very proud that we actually sponsor and fund things going on around the world. And they write, to me sometimes and saying that I read this and I'm so proud of that because we are looking beyond Denmark. I'm not sure if it answers the question, but
I'm not sure.
I did my best.
I'm not sure whether to get away from the person who actually asked it. Alejandro, you wanted to add to that?
Agregar algo, desde ya comparto.
I share the fact that the 555 micro insurance program is really aimed at developing countries. And that's where it's most successful and that's where it's most needed. And we need to develop more programs of that nature, really. We spoke today to the people in charge of that initiative. What I found interesting is that the funds are not used to subsidize premiums or to ensure that the person that is the beneficiary of a microinsurance product paid is less. No, we use that money in order to make the benefit of concluding an insurance contract more beneficial and clearer to the policyholders. There are an infinite number of possibilities in the third world and in developing countries, so this is a drop in the ocean. As Mother Teresa used to say, if that drop wasn't in the ocean, it would be a drop that was missing from the ocean. So we could replicate a program of this nature and develop more programs. For it to have a valid impact, ICMIF members should imitate it, use it as an example, perhaps, and use the advantages it brings to develop similar programs in other countries. Otherwise, it will be just one initiative, and there will always be scarcity of funds at global level for that.
Thank you very much. Now, we were to have another session on regulation. I'm not sure, we're not going to have a full 20 minutes. Jens, was there something additional that you'd like to say about regulation? Obviously, it was clear that it's a critical issue.
Well, it's hard to sort of, everybody's looking like they want to have coffee to talk about regulation. I understand that. But I think the problem is what I said before, that people and the politicians do not like financial services. They're scared of us. And that means that they're going to keep on throwing regulation at us. And my attitude with regulation is like with love. And that is that if you do not get who you love, you have to love who you get. And that, I think, is very much my attitude towards regulation. We have to love it. It's there. We have an advantage, and that is that we are mutuals. We have the culture, but we're also going to be scrutinized much more because of our origin, because we are sort of seen as quasi-entities. What I think is interesting is sort of what's happening in the United States, because usually what happens in the United States comes down to the rest of the world. And you see that President Trump is sort of backing away from regulation. I'm not sure how much he will do that. And that has consequences. We talked about that for ICMIF Americas, because a lot of the life insurance companies or insurance companies there don't see the risk of regulation coming from sort of the Financial Stability Board and that. But well, let's see. I think that what we heard before from the prime regulator was that there will be more. And the key point is that we need to be there. Sean and Sarah and all the others, they need to be there and advocate us as being mutuals, because we have a good reputation. And if we keep a distance to the banks, we can get an advantage if we keep working on the culture, as Anna-Mette and Satu said before.
Thank you, Jens. Well, I think that brings us to a conclusion. The challenges are large, but the opportunity is larger, I would say. And my only closing remark, being somewhat an outsider, would be you are very, very well equipped to thrive and prosper in the future. And I think that in so many walks of life, it's all about having the confidence to go out boldly and project yourselves. And as a community, you have every right to be extremely confident about your future. Thank you very much to the panelists. Thank you to you for your attention.